I'm rolling away because my legs are not the gay I think every day. That guess would make a problem. Happy today. At least I'm not gay.
I think
Nick, that was amazing. Thank you, sir.
we gave Nick control of the opening video. So my internet is very spotty and my face is jumbling all over the place. I don't know what's going on, but can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound good.
As long as I sound okay, everybody's used to my face looking messed up. We have not plugged the merch shop in a while. We've not plugged the merch shop in quite a while. Where
yeah, it has been a while.
Your have you accepted Mary as your personal mother and intercessor shirt? We have a bunch of other stuff. We have the coffee mugs in there and stuff like that. Oh,
I added Yeti style coffee mugs in there.
Yeah, those are. I asked you to send me 2 of those because I will use those quite frequently.
Yeah, I still need to send you 2 of them.
You're the worst.
Yeah, I really am.
Did you send them out to the other people I told you to send them out to?
Yes, I did send them to them. I sent those 2 guys 1 of each.
Okay, we probably got to send a few more out. All right,
for instance, to Nick. Nick should
definitely get a mug.
It's a good idea.
Nick got a nice payment yesterday, so
I did.
Oh, what? Has everybody had McDonald's in the past couple of days?
Our nearest McDonald's is an hour away, so no.
I've had a craving, not gonna lie. Like the day that I saw Trump with the fries, I was like, oh man, it's like one of those days you just want fries and a Coke. Just chill.
I haven't had McDonald's. I mean, I'll have an occasional breakfast at McDonald's because I can deal with their breakfast.
McDonald's breakfast is pretty legit.
Their lunch, no matter what, after you eat it, you regret it the second you finish the last bite. Like the second you finish that last bite, you're just like, why did I do this? But I went yesterday after seeing all the Trump McDonald's videos, and I got myself a nice large fry and Coke. Those fries really are good.
You want to hear something funny? So Maddie's favorite food is cheeseburgers, specifically McDonald's. Favorite thing in the world. Well, this weekend for Hope's 30th birthday, I made her Japanese Wagyu steaks, ribeyes. And we let Maddie try a little piece. And he goes, that's pretty good. He goes, Dad, could you take one of those and turn it into a cheeseburger? I bet it would be better than McDonald's.
This kid.
That's great.
It's amazing how eating that crap when you're a kid doesn't affect you, though. Like, I could eat a Big Mac anytime before 20. After I hit 20, it's like you just, it doesn't hit quite the same. And now that I'm 40, I regret it for days afterward. I did actually attempt to get through this.
This right here?
Yeah. Look, I tried.
My wife tried as well.
I tried to watch it.
My wife said she had to quit in laughter when one of the people complained about being baptized in the church of the SSPX.
I've not seen this. This is great.
Jeremiah said he just referred to Lefebvre as a schismatic bishop or something. It's look, I like Kyle. Kyle's our friend. Yep. I'm not knocking Kyle. He wasn't dealing with the best material to make a documentary with, if that's what that was. I just think all of those people seem bitter to me.
The whole thing is just everything is about the way public.
Yeah,
it's about the way the public receives the thing, like public reception. And we've talked a long time about how like you saw this with Mass of the Ages last year when they talked about like rebranding the Latin Mass movement, the front porch of the TLM and kind of getting it more mainstream. That was a good effort by like the trad community to kind of open its doors and get out there. But with the trad recovery, it's essentially a lot of individuals who again, I don't want to belittle people's stories, but a lot of them look like just these like schizos who are just bitter and angry, and this is just a place for them all to come and scream and rant. It's really cringe. It's really, really weird.
Kyle Whittinghouse. Kyle Rittenhouse.
I mean, it's basically the same name.
It's Kyle Whittington. Wow, man, this choppy internet, you guys can see how gray my beard really is. I don't like it.
I don't think that has anything to do with the internet.
I don't know, but you usually can't see it in this dark room. I don't know why it's so bright in here.
It just is. It is.
The video, look, it just seems like every time Jeremiah talks about it, he has to juxtaposition it against our criticism of it. When we never actually criticized Trad Recovery, we criticized their advertising of it. It's like if they're really talking about people who were sedevacantist coming back to the church, like there's nothing wrong with that. But if they're calling it
unless they're blaming their decision to go sede on traditional Catholicism, then there is something wrong with it because that's ridiculous.
So there was one part where Kyle featured the priest saying, we would love to have had the masses at this conference ad orientem, but our bishop forbid it. And
why did they choose there?
So listen,
they knew that ahead of time.
So he said, the bishop forbid it, and I'm happily obedient to my bishop. And like this was like a highlight for them. And it's like, then Jeremiah was talking about it, and he's like, yes, and that's the thing. He was happily obedient. It's like, cool, but like, you guys aren't allowed to even ask the question, why can't we celebrate the mass ad orientem? Like, why? What could be damaging about that? Like, what could be? It just doesn't make sense. Like, you're not even allowed to ask from their perspective. Asking the question of what happened, why is it like this, is disobedience, and that's just preposterous to me.
Yeah. Plus, when
they
you look
they chose a parish in the middle of nowhere, one of the smallest dioceses in the country, with literally almost no people, let alone any Catholics. And they obviously did it for a specific reason. It was just for that sort of thing right there, so they could make that little sound clip.
Yeah, and what's so interesting about it is, when you think about it, your average person coming into the TLM for the first time, right? I don't think has the quote bad trad experience. I think that the average person, when they go to their TLM for the first time, like I did, they're mesmerized by what they see. It's very unearthly. They're shocked by what they see. And then when they start to look around, they see devout families praying their rosaries, large families together. They hear really good sermons that really give good catechetical instructions to the faithful. And then if they continue to go after a good amount of time, they start to see their entire lives change, where they're like, I'm interested in the liturgical calendar. I'm interested in knowing more about my faith. I'm interested in doing these devotions. What we see with Trad Recovery is a bunch of angry people who are trying to do what I saw one person wisely put in the comments, do the deconstruction ex-evangelical thing. They have bad experiences, but then when you dig down into these bad experiences, it's like most of them aren't necessarily objectively bad. It's like, I didn't like the fact that my parents took me to this place out in the middle of nowhere, and I didn't get to have the proper development in a normal parish that I would have had if
they didn't have donuts after mass.
Yeah, it's just weird stuff like that. Or they'll say things like, oh, they were teaching us young earth creationism, or they were belittling evolutionism. They were just fundamentalists. And this is the whole point, is that their movement, if you can call it this, is just a bunch of angry people who have nothing better to do. That's just all that it is.
We all talk about how a homily, you don't go to mass for the homily, but when you get a good homily, it changes your whole Sunday experience. I went to mass Sunday, and the priest at our parish, he is the best homilist I've ever heard in my life. He's better than anything I've ever heard on Sensus Fidelium even. He gives every thing right now. He gives every homily is a lesson in history and then a lesson in theology. So he takes you back into the early Roman Empire, and he's talking about how St. Peter and Paul replaced Romulus and Remus. He explains to us the whole story of the foundation of Rome on Romulus and Remus, and how the church then becomes the new Rome. And
Romulus and Remus see 12 eagles flying over Rome, symbolizing the 12 apostles.
Dude, all of that, that's literally the homily we got. And then he goes into breaking down the different parts of the traditional mass.
The
So
7
he's
hills
been
of
doing
Rome,
like
symbolizing a covenant.
he's been doing a series on the traditional liturgy, and starting with like the different prayers you say during the liturgy and breaking them down for. Dude, I'm like, we go every time we go, we all sit there just in awe, and then after mass, we all congregate outside. And we're like, this is like, I want to record his homilies so bad and put them on our channel.
Yeah, I know that. I went to the society chapel this week with a friend of mine, and the priest was talking about like the gospel passage of our Lord saying, "Render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's, render to God what is God's." And every time I've heard that that topic brought up, it's always been in the context of obeying the government and paying taxes and stuff. But the priest, he completely flipped the script this week. He said, what is it that we owe God? We always talk about what do we owe to Caesar, but what do we owe to God? Well, what is, the coin has Caesar's image on it, but what bears God's image? Your soul. You're supposed to render to God one day your soul, pure and immaculate. You're supposed to practice virtue. You're supposed to have sanctifying grace in the soul. It's these really good things that you see, and they're very, very common in the traditional world. And so what I see these individuals rise up, and they're spending their time criticizing other Catholics who are pointing out legitimate abuses that are going on inside of the church. One of them I saw in a couple of chats ago, earlier this week. The USCCB in the 1990s forbid Eucharistic adoration as it is currently practiced.
What?
There was a time where seminarians were thrown out of seminaries for praying the rosary. They would burn the manuals in the parking lot. Like, this stuff is not ancient history. It happened even when Anthony was a kid. And so what do you do with that stuff,
So Don goes to my parish, and the priest has been taking us through the offertory prayers. Like, it's just he's just so awesome. Like, when you go and you have something like that being taught to you, like, even my kids are learning something, and my wife adores him. She's like he just feels like a father. That's what she said to me this Sunday. She was like, you feel like he's an actual father. I fell out of the habit of praying my daily rosary over the summer, and I started back up again the past week, and it is really difficult to get back into it after you haven't done it in a while. And then getting back it, so I have to actually force myself right now. I'm hoping it gets I get back into the rhythm of it, because I don't remember it ever being this difficult to even meditate and focus or anything. So I've been as soon as I wake up, forcing myself to do it so that I don't procrastinate to the point where I don't do it anymore, and just even the first couple of days of doing it, you notice like the change in your whole day. It really is unbelievable how much your day changes when you start your day off like that. It's been difficult for me to do for a while, and Aaron.
The Methodist.
See, even the Methodists know our inside jokes. That's great.
Oh, that's funny.
But yeah, it's keep me in your prayers, because it's something that and even fasting again. Like, I've started just praying and fasting again. I'm trying to prepare myself for the coming season, because I know I just fell off over the summer. It was terrible. You're not Methodist?
I thought you're a Methodist pastor.
He
Am I wrong?
Is a pastor of some kind. All right, so here's what we're gonna do, Rob. Tonight we're going to cover some stories.
Yes,
basically, yeah.
You're all protesting Rome, so therefore you're all the same. Reform CRC. What's the CRC? I mean, Reform means you're Calvinistic, but what does CRC mean? So
I don't even know what that means.
Let us know.
So we're gonna do stories tonight, Rob. After each story, when we break for another one, maybe hit that button so the clips are easier to chop up later, and we'll try and put these out as segments later on.
Okay.
we got a few stories. So we got prominent Italian priest claims Francis is not the Pope. We have Bishop Schneider clarifies that Peter was not the Pope when he denied Christ.
Interesting take.
Yeah, we also have Vigano, the Vigano story. The church renewed its agreement with the Vatican and China.
Francis.
I say we do the Schneider story.
Okay.
That's interesting.
So
we don't want to do the Vigano right off the bat.
Vigano.
Okay, you know what? You guys want us to let's just do Vigano, I guess.
Either one.
Because I have some comments about Vigano. I don't know if people are gonna like them.
I think we all have about the same comments, and we'll probably all be yelled at.
Yeah, from one Italian to another. You have
okay. So Archbishop Vigano endorses Trump, tells Catholics abstaining means allying oneself with the enemy. In an open letter addressed to American Catholics, former U.S. Nuncio Archbishop Carlo Maria Viganò argued that Donald Trump is the only possible choice in the upcoming election and that his opponent Kamala Harris obeys Satan. Vigano has stored his full support behind Donald Trump as the next president and called upon American Catholics to vote for him. I hate when they repeat the heading. In an open letter addressed to Catholics to America, Vigano, the former nuncio to the U.S., urged the faithful to vote for Trump as the only possible choice for president, to oppose the deep state and protect future generations, echoing his previous claims that only Trump stands in the way of a globalist coup. The Archbishop suggested that voting for Harris, on the other hand, is morally inadmissible and constitutes a very grave sin, adding that to abstain from voting would not be morally possible, since in this war, declaring oneself neutral means allying oneself with the enemy. Vigano, who was a longtime supporter of Trump's political candidacy, argued in his letter that a vote for Trump means firmly distancing ourselves from the anti-Catholic, anti-Christian, and anti-human vision for society, while at the same time noting serious problems with the former president's declared positions on both life issues, we'll say that. Indeed, Trump has stated that he would oppose a federal ban on, you know what, and would mandate insurance coverage for IVF, both of which practices violate natural law and the explicit doctrine of the Catholic Church. Trump, whom he said is paying with his very life for his fight against the deep state in reference to recent assassination attempts, represents the only possible choice. And I think they just kind of reiterate the stuff from there. So the thing with Vigano is, if you remember when his first statements came out about McCarrick, how mesmerized we all were to finally hear a bishop sounding like an apostle. Like he sounded like an actual apostle when he first started writing those letters. But the further he delved into politics and talking about the deep state, I feel like he lost credibility with a lot of people, which I don't know if it's just the psyop that they're making. Like, I don't know if he's wrong in the things that he's saying when he's talking about the deep church and the deep state and the connections. Like, they all sound right, but as soon as you start going down that road, people kind of write you off as a crazy conspiracy theorist. Like, I disagree with him on some of his moral propositions here, but I don't even know if it's wise for him to be delving into the political sphere.
Could I ask you a question, Anthony? Why do you think, because this is, I think, something good for discussion, why do you think once somebody starts going down that road, people start looking at them as a conspiracy theorist or a wacko?
I think it's a psyop. I think that they want you to just seem like a kook and a crazy person. But that's why I honestly don't know if he's wrong about a lot of the stuff he says. It's just you get laughed off for saying this stuff.
I think it is largely due to the people who tend to be the ones to say it. Like whatever you think about Vigano, he's no Schneider, right? Like he's out there in hiding somewhere, supposedly ordaining random people to the priesthood with little to no training. Like he's off the reservation besides just views like this.
Yeah.
He's no Schneider or anything like that.
He sounds a little kooky when he says it, but like I said, I don't actually know if I disagree with his thesis. It's one of those things where
not to mention his history and actions prior to all this don't point to someone all that solid.
Yeah. It could be a situation of like, don't shoot, like the message is fine, at least in this like specific context. Don't shoot the or in like the messenger is just bad. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the issue. I find that typically a lot of times when we see messages that are really, really positive, ultimately at the end of the day, a lot of times the messengers are kind of just kooky themselves, or in some form or fashion. And I think, as you pointed out, Rob, like he is not a Schneider. He is very much so his own person.
He's certainly no Lefebvre. I mean, Lefebvre, I mean, it was what, 30 years ago, so the language was different. People were talking about the deep state or deep church, but it's not like Lefebvre would have disagreed with a lot of what he was saying. But Lefebvre was an entirely different personality and temperament, and he wasn't a kook. Some people are going to call him a schismatic, but no one would call Lefebvre a kook. Whereas Vigano.
So, well, the other thing is I still think he should have showed up for his trial. Like, for posterity's sake, you know what I mean? To have all of that on the record, him going before a trial and actually facing the tribunal with the accusations against him.
I mean, because be a man and show up.
He makes some very big claims about Francis, right? Like he's claimed, like, so the thing with even us discussing it, so we'll probably lead into the priest and his saying Francis is an anti-pope, because it's one of those things where if anybody's going to say it, it has to be the hierarchy and it has to be the clerical state, because it almost serves no purpose for someone like us to say that. You know, so but to come from Vigano to not show up for that trial, I wish he had shown up. I wish he had actually gotten all those things on the record and actually stated his case. I mean, they probably still would have excommunicated him. But I think when you add in all this craziness around the last election and him making pretty much the same dire warnings he is now. So he said all this about, if Biden wins, the deep state is going to take over. And I'm not saying they haven't. I mean, they clearly have, but it's
like the world didn't end in the last 4 years.
It's like the boy who cried wolf.
I mean, he was talking about the children of life versus the children of darkness, and we're worse off now 4 years later, but the world didn't end, guy.
Yeah, I think it's just a situation of, like, as you guys said, so when he started coming out with his messages, I wasn't even Catholic at the time, right? Because this was Summer of Shame, right? That he started
2018. I think
yeah, I wasn't even Catholic yet, and so I remember reading some of Vigano's stuff after I came into the Catholic Church and thinking that they were interesting. But it's one of those things where you always gotta, at the end of the day, take a drink, y'all, be humble about who you are. And I think that's the thing with Vigano. When you juxtapose him to Schneider, or I would say more fitting, Archbishop Lefebvre. Archbishop Lefebvre was extremely humble. Every time Rome demanded that he would come to Rome, he would show up. He'd always come to all the trials. Oftentimes, Rome wouldn't even allow proper trials to be happening. They would just throw out stuff against their own canon law. He was always very, very respectful. He was. It was a mournful protest. Like, it was his heart breaking. Whereas with Vigano, you look at the language he uses, the fact that he was kind of spiteful about, like, who are they to demand that I come to Rome? I'm not going to show up to this sham trial, things like that. It kind of shows a different attitude, a different spirit at play, which I think is not helpful for him, because in the eyes of like normies, right, who maybe would be sympathetic to his message, seeing like the abuse stuff, it makes him just look like he's making himself his own figurehead, especially when he's just going around doing all of those things.
What's funny is it's the normies that seem to support him.
That's a good point. There's a lot of, like, what I was trying to call like the Fox News Novus Ordo Catholics, who are typically older, right? No diss to people who are older, but like typically older. They do see the legitimate issues with Pope Francis, and then they latch on to this individual as kind of like a leader or a mouthpiece, but then they go too far. And I think what's sad about this is that, like, I don't disagree actually with Vigano's like ultimate message, right? In this like campaign spiel, I don't disagree with him like in the substance, but I think that the messenger going about it, like, he is kind of like the person who's cried wolf too much at the end of the day.
This is a great point. It's the church militant movers, right? Yeah. Look, Rob and I, the last time, we're going to catch a lot of crap in the comments for this. Because
Yeah.
the last time we touched a subject like this, it was
Or-
about Father
Holtman.
Altman, and it is that group of people that they have,
Altman and Vigano have the same sort of spirit about him, like Nick
yeah,
was talking about.
yeah,
And
exactly,
it
right.
seems
So,
to be anger and like vindictiveness.
maybe justifiable too,
Yeah,
right?
I'm not saying it's not.
It's kind of like the opposite coin in a way of like the trad recovery conference, in a way. Like when you look at the spirit that comes from it, you see like Lefebvre is mournful, he is sad. You see people on the other side of his argument who are mournful. You see Ratzinger, right? He's mournful and sad about what's going on, although he disagrees with Lefebvre. But then you see Vigano and Altman, and then you see the trad recovery, and it's just anger, it's spitefulness. And you guys all know this, you can clothe anger in any type of religious garb you want. You can cloak religion with a veil of pride. At the end of the day, it's still pride, and it just stinks worse.
You even when you compare him to Bishop Tyler, Texas.
Strickland.
Strickland. So even when you compare him to Strickland, like Strickland has a humility about him too.
Yeah.
So like Strickland, when he was
into joy, you can tell the guy is just joyful.
Yeah, and look, even with Schneider, every time when Rob and I interviewed him, then when I met him again at the Catholic Identity Conference, he has this humility about him. Like you could almost sense his holiness. It's you could tell that he is struggling really deeply about how to approach this situation. He doesn't want to just come off. He doesn't care who. It's not about raising his profile or anything like that. It's not about raising his profile. It's a genuine care for the flock. Like Schneider sees how confused people are in these times. He sees how hurt people are, and he has the heart of a pastor. Like he just genuinely wants to just tell people, look, we're in something like very important right now. Just stick around, let God sort it out. Where like they were saying in the comments, like Vigano comes off as this fiery prophet. Altman does too. And people do want that sometimes, right? It's like you want somebody to say enough, but that lack of humility, and man, it's hard to, because when we say Moses was meek, like what does meekness really look like? I don't know, man. I don't want to judge anybody's soul. I don't want to judge anybody's heart. I only know what we catch in little snippets and what we're allowed to see from these public things that these people put forward. I have no idea what these men's prayer life is. I have no idea what they're really, what they're debating in their own heart over these things. I think a lot of us feel that fiery anger and they're letting it go. So I don't know, man. It's a tough issue. I wonder who still supports Vigano, like on the more trad side, because I do see people like that we usually would talk to in our chat that people kind of just like, he kind of put himself out the pasture.
He's the crazy old uncle.
Yeah, it's like it's all again about like the way public reception is. But you guys are right about Schneider, because I remember when I interviewed him, and before the interview began, I just remember thinking, wow, this guy is extremely holy. I feel like I'm talking to a living saint right here. Yeah. And I think that this is the distinction that has to be made. There's a difference between doing what our Lord said, which is, being as cunning as serpents and innocent as doves. And I think that model is you speak the truth, but you recognize that you're speaking the oracles of God. And so there's like a holy fear there amongst what you're saying and doing, like you're God is real, and you're in a position of giving what he said to people, taking that and then telling the truth, but doing it from a motive of where it's just anger. Maybe it's the flesh taking over, right? Our lower nature taking over. It's anger. Or even at worst, we see this in politics all the time. People who just do it for power, position, or money. I'm not judging people and saying that that's their motives, but that's what can come off.
Because there's scenes in the gospel where it's not just Jesus overturning the money tables. He walks in and he's like, "You brood of vipers, dead bones."
Mm-hmm.
Empty sepulchers, like he yells at the Pharisees at points. And I think we all have this image of Jesus like a little bit too much of a hippie, and
that's true.
like we really see him as, and I think that image is in my head because of watching Jesus of Nazareth growing up, where we were talking the other day about like if you watch the Lord of the Rings before you read it, you won't be able to separate the images from the movie. When you read the book, you will envision what you saw in the movie in the book, but if you read the book before seeing the movie, you'll have a whole different, where the hobbits will look entirely different.
That'd be cool.
So
I'd like
imagine
my
an
image,
audio Bible read by Anthony.
my image of Jesus is probably off a little bit because of watching that as a kid. So you see Jesus as this hippie walking around in sandals, but I wonder what true masculinity looks like when it gets angry, like, because Jesus is the perfect man. Like he's not soft spoken. So when he speaks and speaks with conviction, it's definitely not it's definitely not Jonathan Rumi. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I don't picture anybody, oddly enough, whenever I'm reading the Gospels. But one thing that can add to this conversation. Oh, thanks, Andy. We appreciate your support. Find and read A Godly Instruction on How to Treat Those Who Wrong Us, written by Sir Thomas More Knight. He was a prisoner in the Tower of London in 1534. Still true. Yeah, no, that's a good piece of advice. What I was going to say is the same gospel passage from this last Sunday's gospel. One line that jumped out to me whenever I heard it was the phrase that Christ did not care about the approval of any man. And I think it's because he's the divine logos, right? It's God and man.
Well, even the Pharisees proposition him that way in this week's gospel. We know
exactly.
you don't care about the opinion of any man. So say, should we pay taxes to Caesar?
Exactly. And that's why, like, when you think about him going into the temple and tossing over everything or rebuking the Pharisees, calling them, a pit of vipers, like that's love incarnate doing that. Like he's doing it out of pure charity.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, like our souls truly purified enough that, like, when we get angry at stuff in the church, when we speak, then it's from that same place. You know what I'm saying? It's not mine. Yeah. I'm not saying I'm perfect at it at all.
There's some interesting things. So on Locals tonight, we're going to talk about Anthony's audio Bible New African includes hand movements. You guys are ruthless.
That's great.
On Locals tonight. So I've been all right. So it started with watching the new Graham Hancock thing. Then I kind of went into I watched a documentary on Pompeii. And then I watched a documentary on the destruction of Pompeii, the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, and the destruction of the temple in that time period in first century. I read the epistle of Barnabas. I read the Didache. Like I've been really just kind of thinking on that first century, right around when the Gospels are written. So we're going to talk about that on Locals because I kind of have a
if we get through the other 35 stories we have lined up.
Yeah, we're good. So that'll be our local show tonight because I think that time period is really, really interesting, and how the faith spreads. Like it's before you have scripture, before you have the canon. What is going on there? It's very interesting, that period to me. So that's what we're going to talk about after this. You guys want to do the priest calling Francis an anti-pope?
Yeah, let's do that.
We're going to that. All right, Rob, click the thing. So that'll be the first clip. We'll put that out as the first clip.
Okay, hold on. There we go. Marker created. Let me scroll through these. Give me 5 minutes.
Let's see. Oh, did you see U.S. intel officials say Russia is behind attempts to smear Tim Walz?
Yes, that's great.
Okay, wait. Okay, I got it. So, a well-known Father Giorgio Maria Faré, I guess.
You are the worst Italian.
Maria Faré, well, if it's Italian, I guess, said in an October 13th sermon that he does not believe Pope Francis is the Pope, arguing the resignation of Benedict XVI was invalid and thus his election was illegitimate. Right away when I read this, I sent it over to Patrick Coffin and our our priest friend, who shall not be named, which everybody knows. Faré opened his sermon by explaining that in recent years he has spent a great amount of time discerning the state of the church, and after much prayer and reflection, he has come to an uncomfortable conclusion. A priest must choose whether to preach what sacred scripture and the church have always taught, or to adhere to what the so-called Pope Francis teaches in his ordinary magisterium. Yes, you understood correctly. I said the so-called Pope Francis. What I am telling you today is that for over 11 years, a man recognized as Pope by the majority has been sitting on the chair of Peter, but he is not, however, the legitimate Pope. Now, I'm not going to go into all the stuff he says. I'm more curious as to what benefit comes from a priest coming out and saying this. Is this solely because his conscience bothers him? And he's like, I can't not say what I believe to be true? Or does he think something will actually be accomplished through this?
I think so. I think that's what it is. And the reason I think that is because I think that people on the opposite end of the spectrum, right, the Pope splainers of the world who make a living making a zillion and one videos defending everything he says, they do the same thing. I think what it is it's a mental scruple. They see something is not right. And people react to it in different ways. Some people react to it as in we have to defend everything the Pope says, and others react into it by saying, well, a Pope could never have said this. Hyperpapalism really is the same coin. It's one side or the other. And so the sedevacantist position, whether it's like this new flavor of Francis specifically isn't the Pope or classical sedevacantism, I believe is essentially the same thing as in reverse Pope-splaining. It's just the Pope can do nothing wrong. If they've done something wrong, then therefore they're not the Pope. So I think it's just a mental scruple that has to be itched.
Man, I know you guys can't stand them, but Jonathan Peugeot did a video.
I don't care about Jonathan. I don't really know anything about it.
I just don't care what an Orthodox heretic says about the papacy.
Well, the thing is,
what was the thing though on the last episode? You were like, I don't like his voice or something.
Oh, his voice.
He did a video on the double symbolism of the upside down cross and how what Peter was doing when he was crucified is this great act of humility.
That was glorious, Rob. That was golden.
Sorry.
That deserves to be clipped right there. That deserves to be clipped. That was good, Rob. That was really good.
Actually, we may be doing some maybe doing something with not it's not going to be our own matchmaking service.
No, we're not pulling a Gordon.
We're not doing a Gordon. We are in talks with a possible sponsor for the show. That's all. So he did a video on the double symbolism of the upside down cross, talking about how when Saint Peter goes and he's crucified upside down, it's this ultimate act of humility. Where if you read at the end of John's Gospel, he says it says oh man, I wish I had the actual exactly what Jesus said, but he says this is to symbolize where you will be taken where you don't want to go at the end of your life, right?
Yeah.
So earlier on in the Gospels, Peter is, no, Lord, I'll die to defend you. And when he takes that role of putting himself, and he's thinking as men do, Jesus calls him Satan, right?
Yeah.
But then at the end of his life, he takes this ultimate act of humility, and he won't even allow himself to be crucified the same way as Jesus was. So he's crucified upside down. And Jonathan talked about how the upside down cross and that dual symbolism, because also Satanists will use it.
Yeah.
But that something about Peter, when he is allowing himself to be led where he doesn't want to go for the Lord, does something, beautiful. But when he's kind of doing an inversion, I'm 23.
Hold on. Wait for the next one.
All right. This is very distracting.
Sorry.
So when he's going to be led where he doesn't want to go and actually doing what the Lord wants, he is the perfect symbol of what humility looks like. But when he takes it upon himself, what it is it's a man-centered inversion of Christianity, right? And the symbolism, and he kind of hinted, he's like, look, if you want to know what's going on in the Roman church right now, it's kind of like that, where Peter is more concerned with what man wants than what God wants, and that's kind of what's happening. But look, he's Orthodox, obviously, and you have to be careful when you watch these things, but it was an interesting way he put it, because he actually brought in like the story of Jonah, and Scott Hahn I heard give a talk one time where he compares Peter to Jonah, also the story, like linking the story of Jonah and Peter together, but just how when Peter is more concerned with the world, it's almost like an upside down version of Christianity, where it's a religion of man instead of war. I mean, that's kind of exactly what we're always talking about, right? Where the church now seems to be more concerned with the goings on of man than they do the actual right worship of God. It was an interesting video. His conclusions at the end are absurd. Obviously, he's Orthodox, but he wasn't trying to present it as the Catholic Church is wrong or anything. He was talking just specifically about kind of the symbolism of Peter and that upside down cross. I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, no, we've talked about this kind of before, but I think it's true when we look at the reality that, all of us who criticize what we see going on in the church, we're not criticizing the office of the papacy.
Yeah.
We criticize the actions being done in the name of the office of the papacy that go fly in the face of previous actions. And you're right, Anthony. What we've seen over the last 60 years is what has been coined as Catholic humanism. Everyone should go and read a good book. You can find it for free online. You can also find it on Angelus Press. It's called the book Prometheus. Prometheus was in ancient Greek mythology. He was I think he was a demigod, if memory serves, but he went up into Olympus and stole fire from heaven and brought it down to man. And the idea behind it was kind of the turning away from the worship of the gods to the worship of man. And we've seen that in the church. Everything has been de-emphasized from God and is now emphasized on man. And if you think that this is a trad conspiracy theory, I would say go and read the famous theological textbooks of the Jesuits in the 1980s, as I have done. They're very, very clear that they're moving away from, they use this language, a theocentric or a God-centered worldview to a man-centered worldview. So much so that they'll say, our theology is not one of going to the Bible and going to sacred tradition and going to what the popes say. It's going to what you have experienced and saying, how has God touched you in your life and what have you experienced? All of this taken as a whole is Peter saying, I don't want man to react badly against me. I don't want the servant to react against me. I don't want the Pharisees to react against me. The same thing for the Pope. I don't want the UN to react against me.
It's the denial, right? So that's why it
Exactly.
kind of links with the Schneider story. That's kind of why I brought this up, right? So, and conversations I've had with Joshua Charles too, where he's looking at it typologically, where he's seeing Peter's denial as almost a period in time that the church will go through. Now, if you even look to, we even have private revelation from the Middle Ages up till current, where they talk about a bad pope being in power. Now we don't know if that's a single bad pope or if it's a period or whatever, but there is something happening with Peter right now. But the thing is, it's going to end in a restoration of the papal office, right? So at the end of John's gospel, Peter, do you love me? Peter, do you love me? Peter, do you love me? 3 times to counter the three denials. Yeah. So there's something happening with the papacy right now. So somebody said, do I think the next pope will be more traditional or moderate? I honestly think we're going to witness something so miraculous that it's going to blow our minds, is what I really think. Now, I don't want to make that where people are like, oh, Anthony was wrong, but I don't know when it's going to happen. I just believe with all my heart that God is going to restore the papacy in a way that will be so miraculous that you will not be able to deny it was God's hand in the matter. Well, I don't know how that plays out. None of us do. You never know what prophecy is going to look like until it's in hindsight. But yeah, that's kind of how I see it. I see it as some kind of typological fulfillment. What we're even going through right now with where the Pope and the bishops are typological fulfillments of the high priest and the Sanhedrin, and they're crucifying the Messiah, and I'm not saying that the hierarchy is but like if we are going through some kind of a passion in the church right now, typologically that does work, and there will be a restoration of that papacy when this is all said and done.
I agree. I think that if that happens, or excuse me, when it happens, the question is just going to be, is it going to be like Pope Francis, really good Pope, or is it there going to be some type of world calamity? Because as I've said before, I think I said it on the last show, I remember it was the one before, I'm of the opinion that God is chastising us, right? I think that's kind of a common position, but like chastising us with these bad popes. But I wonder how much he's going to like bring us to our knees to recognize our need from him. Is it going to be a world war? Is it going to be another type of, supposed, pandemic? Or is it going to be that the Vatican one day, because of the massive amounts of migration of Muslims, is going to be a mosque one day? Is the Vatican going to be a mosque? Is something like that going to take place?
I don't
I
think
don't
that's that far out of the realm of possibility, where
Yeah.
like I really do think all of this allowing infiltration of our borders and allowing Islam to come in, like that will be our chastisement. God will raise up a Muslim army to chastise his children. It's just all being set up right now, right in front of our eyes. And Europe is so apostate at this point, they have completely forgotten their God. And there's no way. I mean, dude, this is why I really think right now we should be reading like the King Arthur stories, because those stories, the thing is, I never really read the stories. I watched the movie Merlin when I was a kid.
Mhm.
But the miniseries on NBC was really good, because the way they did it was you had like Queen Mab and all these characters that were part of the old system. And because people were no longer worshiping the old gods, they were losing their power. And Christianity was actually coming into play. And it's kind of the city of God playing out, right? Like it's seeing Augustine's city of God playing out. And we're just seeing that in reverse right now, where people don't recognize our God, and you're seeing these old gods come back into being, and they're coming back into power. And it's just a complete reversal of what happens in the early days of Christianity.
Yeah. Plus the thing is Jared, he brought up a good kind of rebuttal. We talked about this a little bit ago. The Vatican will never fall like Constantinople. Here's a kind of a thought for the audience. So we all know about the reality of that the gates of hell will not prevail against the church.
Wait, I just got to pause you, because I just watched a documentary on the fall of Constantinople too.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, man, like that. I've been like digging into history, because there's nothing to listen to or watch on YouTube right now. That you're muted.
You're muted, Rob. R.I.P.
You're supposed to be watching videos about folklore for the Halloween episode.
I'm going to. I will. But Rob, you got to understand what I'm trying to do right now. Oh, Nick, you want to finish your thought, and then I'll say it.
I was just going to say, think with me, y'all. So the Vatican is not the mother church of Rome. It's St. John Lateran. That's the historical seat of the office of the papacy. So where
were the bones of Peter buried?
The bones of Peter are at Vatican City, but the historic place.
Where did they find them though? Like,
at the
catacombs,
in the necropolis.
Yeah, underneath. So what I'm thinking, what could happen, y'all, is that God takes away the Vatican, our greatest building, makes it a mosque, and the Pope is regulated to some small dinky chapel in Rome. Maybe it's something grand like St. John Lateran, or maybe it is something like nothing. Last thing I'll say about this is, like, if you need no other sign of God's chastisement, why would God allow a Freemasonic Anglican to do his quote-unquote mass upon the altar in St. John Lateran, which is what we saw last year? If you guys remember, twice we saw heretical groups go in and perform their quote masses in St. John Lateran, the mother church of the papacy. Strange times we're in,
Yeah, it's look, when I gave my talk in Chicago last year, that was my whole talk, just talking about how we're seeing like a typological fulfillment in reverse. And that's what we're witnessing right now. I mean, people have been watching the show for a long time. Have heard me say it enough. But Rob, the other thing that I've been trying to do is, I feel like culturally we're on the cusp of something about to change. And I've noticed that people are pretty sick of hearing the same topics they've heard for the past few years.
Mhm.
Like, nobody cares about the trans stuff anymore. Like, it's just like, how many times are you going to watch this? Like, when I see those Charlie Kirk videos pop up, I'm like, how do people still watch this stuff? Like, who cares about the based conservative going to the college campus and owning the college kids? Like, I'm tired of it. So what I really want to try to figure out is, where is the conversation going to shift over the next year? Because I really think the things that are being talked about now are getting very stale. And I don't know what the next conversation is going to be, but I want to kind of be at the forefront of it. Whatever it is, I'm just trying to pay attention to where I see people's interests going. Because, I mean, we've talked about it on here enough times. Even tonight's show, like, you have to do these because these are the shows that people tune into. But they're really just to draw people in and then get into a deeper conversation about other things.
Mm-hmm.
But people like headlines, man. It's one of those.
Sean is right. Sean is right. I was literally about to say the same thing. I was like, well, boys, I did send you guys a clip in the show notes.
Yeah, we said that was
locals.
maybe for locals.
I said it was only going to be on locals, but I think we should talk about it in the future. So sign up, y'all, for our locals, because
well, when you find out like who's behind all this multiculturalism, it really okay. So guys, loved your combo with Mike Pantile. Anthony, you said that men have the genuine desire to be real men, but aren't there yet. Do you think issues like lack of assertiveness, courage, righteous anger are issues we can bring to the confessional?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. If they reach levels of sin, yeah.
Yeah. So what I would, but you could even bring, you can bring so not to receive absolution, but you can bring imperfections to confession after you give your sins, so you can confess your sins, and then you can also be honest about your imperfections and where you're failing. Because
I would just say, if you're going to do that, though, make an appointment outside of like the usual time.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can go to that practical for sure. But yeah, no, those are good. I would also say one thing about masculinity. I think that one of the big reasons why we struggle with it, not the only, but the big reason, is we don't have any type of right of initiation as a society. We're so hyper individualistic that, unlike, for instance, in like, let's just say the Amish community, yeah, they have their bar mitzvah.
That's not really a rite of passage. A rite of passage would be more like what the Aboriginals do in Australia, where they will take their kids on walkabout.
It could definitely be like that. That's fair. What I'm saying is, like, we don't even have like a ceremony, like just something culturally passed on, because we're so individualistic that the best that we can do as a society is, it's like, okay, is it like when you can drive? Is it when you can vote? Is it when you can drink? Which one is it? And I think that that's a big hole in our society.
So let's go back to that question. Actually, bring that back up.
And thank you for the chat, by the way, or super chat. We appreciate it.
So do I think issues like lack of assertiveness, courage, righteous anger? Okay. So I thought you were saying, should you confess if you're over assertive, or if okay. So we talked about this the other night. Sins of omission, even, right? So there are times where we are called to put our foot down and say something. And a lot of times it has to do with temperament. So like, sometimes you might not be the confrontational person, but sometimes I really do think justice demands we confront things, right? But this conversation with Vigano, like, I don't know if that's the right way to go about it. There has to be times where you put your foot down. I mean, I would say, especially with like issues that come to your family, you always need to put your foot down and make sure your family's protected. But I wonder, even when we're having conversations with our in-laws and things like that, right? Like, we've all gotten this idea that, oh, you don't bring religion and politics into a conversation. And from doing that over the past 60 years, because it's not polite conversation, we've allowed them to overtake the conversation. And it becomes where I'm sitting at dinner with my in-laws and they're asking my daughter what career she wants to have. And it's like, what? Like, wait, what? Why are you pushing feminism on my daughter? But I think it comes down to us being too timid in our faith and not having enough courage to go and say things that need to be said.
Yeah, ultimately it's virtue that needs to be practiced. So I do really like the question, because one of the things that the questioner asked is like lack of assertiveness and courage. So what is the virtue then that needs to be practiced for men? So magnanimity, that's what has to be practiced. You have to practice magnanimity. It's like the
What's
art
that?
of being a man, the art of manliness. It's stepping out in courage. You can say it's part of fortitude, right? Having fortitude and stepping out and saying there is an injustice taking place. I'm not going to allow that. Or somebody needs defense. I'm going to protect them, fit the scenario. Same thing when it comes to lack of anger. You can ask yourself, like, why do I have a lack of anger? Or as an example, for a lot of guys out there, do you guys know about the vice of fun scholastic word here, but pusillanimity? Pusillanimity is false humility. It's, you have gifts that God has given you.
Virtue signaling?
No, it's not even necessarily that, but
it's the opposite of magnanimity. So
yeah,
it's not striving for excellence.
exactly. So it's basically like, it could be two things. Number one, it can either be a false humility where this is the person who beats themselves up all the time, and it's not real humility, it's just they're trashing themselves. Or B, in practice, it can be, God has called you to step out in courage. God has called you to be excellent, but
Humble
yet you
bragging,
don't
yeah.
want to do it. You don't want to do it. Yeah, humble bragging. That's a good way of putting it.
Okay, so I would, all right. So
True.
man, like that, I'm hesitant to share certain things because I don't want it to come off that way. So like one of the things I confessed was not because I confessed this the last 2 times I went was not actually setting aside time for prayer. And I realized this last time, like I didn't have a firm purpose of amendment last time I confessed that. Right. So I kind of just rattled it off, and the priest didn't really give me much advice on it. But when I went this time, I was like, I'm like, I have to make a firm purpose of amendment on what I'm actually going for. And that's what made me actually start saying my rosary again. But I also noticed, like, the first thing after I went to confession on Saturday, like my first instinct was to go on Twitter and be like, I love confession.
No, don't lie. Your first instinct was to complain about the length of the line.
There was no line. I got there first. I was
okay.
the first one there. I was the first one there. But yeah, I think that's the exact sin you're talking about. Oh, I went to confession, and it's like, oh, well, I'm really admitting I'm a sinner, but it's really like, oh, I want to just tell everybody I went to confession.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
It is a virtue signaling, as you said, in that regard, for sure. It can be. That's the thing with vice. Vice can manifest itself. It's so sneaky in so many ways. And what people have to do is they have to practice the opposite virtue whenever something like that is going on. So, like, for instance, guys, if we're struggling with, that's funny.
He would do a better job than what's
my
going on.
Wi-Fi is a little choppy tonight. Wait, Nick, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What do you think? Because I don't want anybody to think I'm calling them out directly, but like, what do you think of somebody going online and going, I'm going to pray right now, please tell me your intentions and I'll go pray for you? Like,
you know who you are.
I think that ultimately what I would say, there's 2 principles. So number 1, we can't ever judge someone of sin, like in the sense of rash judgment, without there being some type of like actual manifest evidence that they're doing something wrong. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I'd look at the person and I would say, like, okay, who are they? Are they genuinely a person seeking after, holiness, or do they have like a tendency to kind of always try to be getting attention? It's the intention behind it that can be that can make something which is good, which is like, yeah, like if you guys need prayer, let me know, I'll pray for you. That's good. But the intention behind it can be what sours the object if you're going to get kind of strictly scholastic on it.
Yeah, man, there's since going, I've been trying to be a little less how would you say it? Just a little less controversial on Twitter. Like, I just been like, I'm still being me, but I've been trying to be I'm not intentionally trying to stir up Protestants as much as I typically would.
Come on, where's the fun?
I mean, I know, but that's I really do worry that I'm going to go to hell for my Twitter though. Like,
well, I mean,
I'm really worried about it.
Here's questions that you can ask yourself. Ask yourself genuinely, why am I doing this? What is my deep down motive for doing this?
Well, so I'll tell you right off the bat. Like, so certain posts are strictly to troll and bait, because the more interactions you get, but it's like, what do I get? $100 every 2 weeks? It's like, my soul's not worth that. I've just been trying to think a little deeper about it. That's all.
No. So no, there's nothing necessarily wrong with obviously having the he-he's and the ha-has on someone else's expense per se. But ultimately we have to just ask ourselves, what is the intention behind this act that I'm doing? So if you're going on to Twitter or you're doing anything, you're asking people, oh, do you have prayer intentions or whatever? If the intention behind that is to exalt yourself in some form or fashion, you have to really look at yourself and really say, like, is that really what's behind this? Then what I would do is I would just say, well, stop doing that. Doesn't mean throwing out, your Twitter or whatever, but just stop doing that. But if it is something that's really, really harming you, then yeah,
okay, so wait, now, all right, so I'm struggling with this too, because I read the Babel story. Man, I
just want to point out, we are 2 stories into the 30 stories you said.
But I send those in case.
I told you, Rob, 4-hour stream. 4-hour stream tonight.
All right, you know what? Let's take this over to locals, because I want to talk about
replacement theory,
the Tower of Babel. I want to talk about the Jerusalem temple falling. I want to talk about Pompeii. I want to get into a deeper conversation. We did 2 stories tonight. We'll cut up a clip for the people who didn't watch the full show. But if you guys enjoy this show, we go over to locals and we do a second hour over there.
That's where the real conversation begins.
That's where the real deep conversations come out. That's where usually we're all a little more free and sharing personal stuff, things like that. But that's honestly, as soon as we get off YouTube, it's like, oh, okay, now we can actually talk. We're always worried about what we're going to say on this platform. So if you guys do enjoy this show, the show is much better on the other side. And this is kind of just the preview to the real show. So we'd love to have you guys over there. It's $5 a month. Come on. Stop being cheap. We got the cheapest audience, other than the people who super chatted tonight. You guys are the best. Everybody else, too cheap.
Okay, we're gonna switch.
Do you have to plug anything before we go, or just locals, right?
Locals, merch shop, your Advent trip. You ever gonna talk about that?
Aunt Jemima, I'm gonna give you a hard pass. I appreciate the offer.
Nick, for the channel.
For the channel.
Yeah, guys, if anybody wants to go to Italy, Patrick Coffin and I are going in December 2nd to the 15th. I can get you a discount. So if anybody wants to go, reach out, because we got plenty of seats left. We're definitely going. It's going to be an amazing trip. It's a very small group going. It's looking like maybe 12 or 14 of us or something like that, which is going to be one of those trips where you make lifelong friends. We're going to have every meal together. It's going to be an amazing trip. So if anybody wants to go.
For those of you who are going, that means if you don't want to be one of the only 12 people that Anthony's going to talk to for 10 days, you need to find someone else to buy a ticket and go with you.
Find a friend. But all right, we're going over to locals, guys. We'll see you over there.
This goes out to all you men out there who are inclined to submit yourself to the lowest faculties in the most pathetic manner. You effeminate man think you were created in order to consume endless amount of pleasure without any consequences? Put your damn video games and smartphones down and pick up something heavy. Do something arduous for once. Pray daily. Submit yourself under the interior discipline. Learn a trade. Buy some land. Get married and have lots of kids so that may you one day raise a generation of virtuous warriors. Learn the rules of the retrograde. Done with y'all.